Hello, everyone. Welcome to tonight's edition of The Robust Opposition. Tonight, I'm doing episode 8 in my series, Will the Real Progressive Please Stand Up? And my guest is Roza Calderon. How you doing tonight, Roza?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm fine. I'm really psyched coming off of the big Sanders rally yesterday for racial justice. The whole movement was there. Everybody was there. And it was like
Right.
old home week. It's like the 2016 campaign never ended.
Yeah, I saw the pictures all over Facebook. So a lot of
Yeah.
happy people participating in it.
Yeah, we had a great time. Anyway, I wanted to mention to the viewers that you are, by profession, you're a geoscientist, you're also a small business owner, and you operate a nonprofit. So I'm going to allow you to explain a little bit more about your background and also tell us why you decided to run for Congress, especially in this very heavily Republican district.
Yeah, absolutely. So my background, like you said, is geoscientist. That's where my work is. I was able to get my degrees in geography and in geographic informational systems. And so I work a lot in environmental issues. I travel, which a lot of people always ask me if I even work because I'm always out and about. But I also started a group called Hour of Code California. So I teach kids who code at our local public schools. And I teach kids really how to create apps, how to create their own websites. I mean, they're on their phones almost 24/7, so they might as well know how to create the content that they're actually seeing. And it's really fun. Usually by the third lesson, these kids are teaching me something, or I have 20 helpers in the classroom, which is really great. And I also run another group called Lab 40, which we try to train women in technology so that they can re-enter the workforce with new skills.
Well, that's great. And what made you decide to run for Congress? Well, first of all, tell us about this district. It's Tom McClintock. How many years has he been reelected? By how many percentage points do Republicans dominate the district? And based on that, why did you decide to challenge him?
All right. So mostly this district is enormous. That's the first thing that you need to know. We actually, I think we're only second in how many counties we house, but we have 10 counties stretching all the way from Nevada all the way down to Fresno County, which is just huge. And that encompasses Lake Tahoe, Yosemite, Kings Canyon National Park, and Calaveras, the big trees of Calaveras and the sequoias. And it's a beautiful region. Unfortunately, as you mentioned, we have Tom McClintock, who is our representative. This is a guy who represented us here in California, termed out, and then moved up north, recruited really to come and replace Doolittle after his scandal was going on, and really was able to defeat anybody really who's tried to challenge him because of the money that comes along with McClintock. So he's funded by the Koch industries. He's funded by oil and lumber companies and really anybody who's ready to destroy our beautiful planet. The district itself, it is very conservative, and he took this district by 63%, I think, last election. So that's a huge, huge gap. But this district was also carried by Bernie in the primary. So it is something that we are focusing on. We know that the people here are dying for change. We also know that even before and after Bernie was in the race, that Trump started messaging with a populist message. And that's how he was able to reach out to middle America, to the working class. And so that's kind of what our focus is really fighting for the people. Now, when I jumped into the race, I never once considered that my skin color or my name were actually going to be an issue. And to this day, it actually has not been an issue, except with the Democratic Party. So the Democratic Party has asked me not to run, that somebody with my name just can't win, that this is our only chance. And to that, I respond, so anytime that somebody becomes a little racist, we don't try to pull them left. We try to meet them halfway. Is that what it is? I've been really successful at gaining support from the state of Jefferson, the Green Party, Republicans, the Tea Party, Democrats, and anybody who's just a human who works, who tries to provide for their families, and is ready to get all these crooked politicians out of office.
Right. So the 99%, essentially.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yes. Now, So this district is not part of the red to blue district. Like the DCCC have identified, I think it's 5 districts in California where the Republicans have a small lead, but Hillary won the popular vote. Your district is not one of those. And yet you did tell me that Steny Hoyer is supporting one of your 2 opponents, who is a former Republican. Can you tell the viewers about your opponents?
Yeah, absolutely. So, the big thing is that, number one, we were not part of the top 7 districts that were targeted. We were not part of the 10 districts that were targeted. We were dead last in the 14 districts in California whose seats are being held by Republicans currently. But because of the activism of the people here, including myself, the protests that you saw all over the news that started the resistance recess in February of last year, that protest was led by me, that sent McClintock running, made national headlines. We were able to get some attention to this district and some highlighting on who McClintock truly is. That being said, after people asked me to run, the community gathered and asked me to run as their leader locally. We did have 2 women jump into the race. They both moved to California to run.
Wow.
One had grown up here when she was young, but had been gone for almost 2 decades. The other one has never lived in the district. The other one has never worked in this district. The other one has never owned a home in this district. And she is the one that is being supported by the DNC and the DCCC in Hoyer.
Wow.
She has been funded by Hoyer. She has been given $5,000 from one of his PACs. And right around that time is when all this money started flowing in. She has been a lifelong Republican. She attended a Christian Scientist school where LGBTQ were not even allowed to attend until 2015, until it became a national headline for them and really bad news, bad press. And that's who they're supporting. The reason they're supporting her, because she brings in the big bucks. Not because of her message, not because of her platform. And that's barely it. Most of the people in this district know who's running. But if you ask them who she is, at least 2 weeks ago, nobody knew who she was. She's never campaigned. She was just depending on that money to come in. And now she's sitting pretty. I think they dropped almost $500,000 in media buys and getting staffed for Get Out GOTV. And that's how she's going to try to undo the work that we've been doing on the ground for over a year.
Right. But presumably you have made the direct contacts with the voters. You've been going door to door. People know you as an authentic, organic candidate. And there is a possibility, although, we actually in the movement like to say the only thing to beat money power is people power. Do you have a good volunteer organization behind you, aside from the paid people that they're bringing in to get out the vote? Do you have an equal organization of volunteers behind you?
Yes, and that is the most amazing thing. We have been campaigning, like I said, for over a year. We've been knocking on the door since September of last year, phone banking since December of last year, and we still cannot afford to run our own polls, but my opponents are. And even on their polls, which they haven't released for that specific reason, is that I'm leading a name recognition and ballot designation and work experience. And that's because people here know me. And that's what we're hoping that will, stay true through the election. We have, like I said, communicated with people whose doors they have never, ever had a candidate knock on their door. They have never actually received a phone call from a candidate. Usually they think it's a robocall, but I'm like, no, it's me. It's Roza Calderon. I'm actually running for Congress. I wanted to call and introduce myself. So it's a very different campaign that we're running. We have no paid staff. It's all volunteers. We are really a small army that never sleeps, just doing everything that we can in-house. We do our website in-house, our design in-house, our videos in-house, everything that we can do. And of course, we have the amazing support of Justice Democrats and brand new Congress who are really behind us with, saving us hundreds of thousands of dollars, if you really think about it, when it comes to phone banking, texting. All of those things cost thousands of dollars per month. And they are able to help us out with those resources. And it's wonderful.
Now, what about some of the other progressive groups, such as Our Revolution, Democratic Socialists of America, Progressive Democrats of America, labor unions, environmental organizations? Do you have endorsements from those groups?
I have endorsements from local Our Revolution groups, and I think that they have mentioned that they have submitted my name to the national one because that's the way it works. You have to get local nominations first. So we are just waiting. We have the local DSA from Fresno who submitted us for focus for us here in this district nationally, and also PDA from Fresno who's helping us out to get that help nationally. So that's what we're really hoping for, is that we can get some of their resources, some of their volunteers to help us finish these last few calls. You know, we've almost contacted 15,000 people just on making phone calls. You can add another 30,000 by text, and you can add another 10 plus thousand on doors that we've knocked, visibility that we've done, sitting in front of grocery stores. I mean, we've tried to do it all.
Yeah. Now, I'm going to go through the litany of progressive policies that I support just to make sure you check off all the boxes.
Okay.
But what are your top 3 issues?
You know, my top 3 issues in this district and really nationwide, because that's one of the things that I try to point out, is that when I get to Congress, my vote will matter, not just for my district, not just for my state, but nationwide and on international policy. So the things that I really want to fight for is, number one, getting money out of politics, because until we get that out of the way, we are mute fighting back and forth on issues. You know, that's what has a stronghold in our Congress people now. Their votes are bought and paid for. They no longer speak for us. The second thing, of course, I want to make sure that we have equity in education, because it is absolutely absurd that our children's futures are dictated by the zip code that they were born into. I want to make sure that we also have healthcare for everyone that's actually accessible and affordable, and that's going to be done through Medicare for all. And lastly, because I am a geoscientist, I want to make sure that we fight for our environment. This is the number one issue that's facing the world right now, and we need to get to work right now. We have no time to spare. We have no any other months to worry on policy. We need to act right now. And lastly, I came to the U.S. as a refugee from El Salvador. So immigration to me is absolutely important. We need to make sure that we address our broken immigration system, that we tackle the quota, that we tackle the backlog of names and numbers and people who are trying to get ahead, and that we fight for our dreamers.
Now, that seems to be an issue that polarizes a lot of Democrats and Republicans, immigration, and also the sanctuary state issue. We've seen a lot of our local municipalities take votes in their city councils to say, no, we don't support being a sanctuary state. And you also hear that a lot of Latinos, especially older homeowner Latinos, tend to be conservative on this issue as well. Where do your constituents stand?
You know, well, there's someplace all over the place. I've talked to people. Number one, I actually was at a town hall that I was organizing for Tom McClintock, and I was out there. Like I said, I have connections with the people from the state of Jefferson and the Tea Party. And I remember speaking to this one gentleman who asked me, you know, he said, Rosa, my son just got back from Costa Rica. Why do we not have an immigration process like they have in Costa Rica? And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, they have a visa program. They have a worker's visa. They have a residency program. And then they have citizenship. And I said, that's exactly what we have. The problem is, and then I went into some of the details. And he ended up really agreeing with me on what we need to do with Dreamers. Number one, with Dreamers, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. We need to do the right thing right now. And that's to grant them all citizenship. Anybody who is under DACA protection has already gone through the strenuous background check, checking in every 2 years to renew their status. And it is due time that these kids that we already invested in, that they become actual citizens. The second one, I want to make sure that we remove our current court system out of the executive branch in law and actually apply it to the judicial. Because we have children right now who are going into court and are unable to represent themselves. And there is nobody saying that these kids need representation. So there is no due process. The other is that we need to fund our courts properly. In some of these places, we have a backlog that extends 3 to 5 years, and people are just waiting. So there's a lot of work that we can do in immigration reform. There's people here who agree that it needs work and we need a solid plan. I am not, selling them Candyland. I know that we have 11.4 million undocumented people in the United States, and it's not going to be a one blanket solution for all. It's going to be fixing and patching things here and there until we can solidify the entire immigration programs.
Now let's talk about the economy up there, because I remember traveling up there just on vacation when I first moved here in the 80s, and there was a lot of logging going on. But over the decades, there's been less logging, and there have been a lot of people put out of work, and some of these communities are being hollowed out economically, along with, the rest of the country, with manufacturing plants closing and offshoring these jobs. What is your plan to grow the economy in your district?
So we have a lot of issues in this district. One of the big issues that our district is tackling and the state is tackling has been the effects of the drought that we just kind of came out of. Our governor said that the drought was over, but it's truly not. And we've lost some funding from FEMA because of his action. But what we really need to understand is that there's 130 million pines in California. Over 50% of them are just in my district. This is now an enormous problem that is leaving people with burned homes, loss of property, unable to file for insurance policies that are not doing their payouts. They're left with nothing. It's created housing shortages. It's created job shortages. It's created a plethora of problems in this region. So that's one of the things that I think that as an environmental issue, we can look at our old loggers and invite them to work. Number one, because a lot of these areas will not be able to just be mowed down, as McClintock suggests. We cannot just go and clear cut. A lot of these trees are manageable. We can treat them, and some of them we will have to do selective logging to thin out our forests so that we can have healthier forests. So that's one way to get people to work. I also do believe that the new wave of jobs is going to be in technology. Like I mentioned to you, I teach kids who code. I teach women new technology to go back into the workforce. And that is something that we can train people who have been sitting out, they have not recovered from the recession, and help them work from home. We can have new training programs. We can get people back on their feet. These are areas where the unemployment rate is double or triple that of the national average. So, and some of these counties actually depend on over 50% of the population depends on some type of safety net program. So I know the people there want to work. I know the people there want to have some dignity, and they feel that the way that they get that is through hard work. And that's something that we can offer. I also support a jobs program, a jobs guarantee program to get people to work. We have so many things to fix when it comes to infrastructure. We have so many things. I mean, you just walk down the street and you can complain about 20 million things, and those are all jobs waiting to be created.
Yeah. Now let's talk about water and agriculture. Where do you stand on the Twin Tunnels project, which Jerry Brown calls the water fix? For it or against it?
I'm definitely against the tunnels. And, as an environmentalist, I don't know how I could support a program like that, period. There's a lot of things also with the high-speed rail system that I actually worked on hiring some of the technical staff. I actually worked on the project myself. And there was a lot of things that as an environmentalist, we just couldn't get behind. And I can tell you that the wildlife agencies, almost all of us, were delaying the process sometimes because they were being very neglectful to the endangered species that we have in California.
So now we have a family by the name of the Resnicks who own Paramount Farms. Their holding corporation is called Roll International, and they make they grow pistachios and almonds and tangerines. They also have Fiji water. They have the Franklin Mint. They are a family who lives here in Beverly Hills, big mansion, 2 lots in Beverly Hills, multimillionaire philanthropists. They've given to the hospital, to the museum, to the university, and yet they use more water than the residents of San Francisco and Los Angeles combined. and they've managed to wrest control of the Kern Water Bank in Central California away. It's like a public-private partnership thing, but they have the controlling interest. They're taking all the water. There was a film called Heist, California Heist, which showed them stealing the water. And small family farmers are forced to tap their groundwater because they don't get it. All the money goes to big ag and to the frackers. And meanwhile, we have a huge subsidence problem. So what do you think can be done about, should we even be growing products like pistachio and almonds, which are water-thirsty crops in the desert during droughts that are mostly for exports anyway? They're not feeding our people.
Right. Right. And, water is a huge issue for my district because we are a water of origin district. And unfortunately, as we go through the Central Valley, we do see the signs, give us our water, save the water. But it is truly not the government who's taking the water. It is private individual companies that are doing this. And these are huge corporations that have the power to do so. McClintock gets a lot of his campaign contributions from people like that. And that's why he doesn't fight for our rights here. The other thing that we really need to tackle is the way that water is, the infrastructure is managed. It really goes from municipality to municipality, from county to county. And I think that at this point, the only thing that we can do is establish a state program that has an oversight and sees what's happening with our water so that there is not just too many people taking so much and very few taking so little.
Okay. Now, do you have an opioid problem crisis in your communities?
We do. It's a little bit less obvious, but it is there. I was in Sonora just a few months ago, and I remember walking into the gas station, and I was being given a tour by one of the residents there, and she just pulled me back outside, and I said, "What's going on?" And she's like, "I cannot let you see what's in there." And I said, "Well, what is it?" And she said, "It's about the people who are now homeless in this area." And I said, "Oh, I saw it." It was literally a poster of a few people with their names and their faces saying to not serve them. So
Wow.
these are not homeless people that just sprouted out of nowhere. These are people who were part of their community at some point. Sonora actually tried to implement a law that you were not allowed to camp within city limits. And that's to prevent people from, sprouting tents here and there. And we have that problem because of the opioid crisis. These are not people that have been long time homeless people. These are not long time transients. These are members of their own community who have been shunned away, and there is no resources to help them get better.
Yes, although now they say that since opioid use is also largely a white problem, all of a sudden it's now a disease, whereas when people of color use drugs, it's a crime. So even our Republican politicians are becoming much more sympathetic to people that have those addictions. Well, you led into the next area that I was going to ask you about, which is the homeless and the affordable housing crisis, because it's not just here in LA where I live. Even though we have 58,000 homeless in Los Angeles County, I believe that California as a state, has 25% of the homeless population in the country. Is homelessness and lack of affordable housing a big problem up where you are?
Absolutely. And, I actually left to go to North Dakota to do some research. And at the time, North Dakota was the most expensive place to live. I was in the middle of the oil boom, and it was more expensive than Manhattan and San Francisco. But when we moved back, I finished my research, my baby and I were looking for a place to live. And I remember, after we had left, because I sold my place, we were looking for an apartment, something in between our next home. And I was just shocked at the prices. I was just shocked. We don't live in an amazing metro area where the prices are agreeable with the wages that people are earning here. In fact, people are spending more than 50% now of their actual wages on housing, just housing costs. That's excluding their utilities. That's excluding their transportation to get to work. And people just cannot afford it. So in this district, outside of the two main counties, which is Placer County and El Dorado County, where we have the majority of the jobs, the housing crisis extends to places where there are no jobs. So like I mentioned to you earlier about the fires, one of the things that happened was that the people who were able to get something through their insurance policies to get housing, they basically took up everything that was for rent. They bought up everything that was for sale. And the people that were dependent on that for temporary housing while they came to work for the season now are absolutely just left with nothing. So they just have chosen to not come to work there. So it's created housing shortages, job shortages. And then the cannabis industry did come in and offer housing and better paying jobs and healthcare. And now you have this huge influx of people that are really against cannabis in the area. So it's just a continuance of problems that goes on. And, you know, one of the funny things is that we actually try to canvass and do visibility and tabling at the people's stores. So we hang out in front of Walmart talking to constituents. And I remember I was wearing my Costa Hawkins shirt, which says the rent is too damn high.
Yeah.
And I was walking into Walmart to let the manager know that we were going to be sitting to the side of the store. And the guy, the greeter at the door said, "You're damn right, it's too high," you know, because the rent is too high. There's no controls in California. The prices of housing don't match the job market. And that's something that we need to pay attention to because it's affecting our economy in a bigger way than we think.
Well, I want to ask you one more question on housing, and then I'm going to ask you to tell people how they can support your campaign. And my question is this. The Nation magazine has a new issue out with 2 articles on housing. I've read the first one, and it's a great history of how this crisis got started because in 1970, we didn't even have the word homeless because we had just been coming off of several decades of major commitment to public housing in this country. Now, it hasn't always been the best kind of housing. Some of them are these very alienating projects in low-income communities that have led to increased drug use, increased crime, et cetera, et cetera. But there have been all sorts of housing policies, whether it's just the GI Bill giving returning vets money to buy their first home, or you know, planned communities that the government has funded. I've been watching, in the 40 years since I've graduated college, neoliberalism take hold, which is that the private sector can do everything better than the public sector. Mm-hmm. And we've clearly seen that fail. So my question to you is, if you get into Congress, would you make a big push for more funding for public housing? And how do you think that's going to go over in this current environment?
Well, you know, there's 2 ways to go about it. I'm not sure how many people are aware about this, but it was actually Reagan who came in and just slashed the funding for HUD and Section 8. So up until Reagan's years, you know, the great, wonderful Reagan, homelessness was really contained. And then it exploded. It doubled just within less than a decade. And now you see the effects 20, 30, 40 years later. And so I would make sure that we are funding HUD, that we are making sure that we are creating lower income housing, and that they are affordable homes that people can buy with the wages, the living wage that I will push for them to earn. And that's what we need to do. And locally here, anytime that someone hears me complain about Reagan and they tell me to go someplace else, I let them know, well, I want you to thank Reagan for letting me be here, because if it wasn't for the war that he started in my country, I wouldn't be here with you today.
Well, there's a lot of things that we should be touching on. I didn't get a chance to talk to you about foreign policy. I didn't get a chance to talk to you about monopolization and antitrust and the banks and public banking. Normally, I go on for about 45 minutes with candidates, but today I'm trying to do 2 shows in one and then my endorsements. So I'm just going to direct people to your website, Elect Roza, which I've been putting on the screen this entire time. I'm going to put it on one more time. And before we go out, why don't you tell people how they can volunteer for you, either if they're in your district or if not?
So if you're in my district, please send us an email. We need you right now to help us knock on doors. We are trying to complete 5,000 door hangers before Tuesday. So every single person gets about 80, 160 if you really feel athletic for the day. The other way is to help us by making a small contribution. We are trying to make sure that our commercials stay on the air until the day of the election. We are trying to make sure that our ads are making their way to viewers against the $500,000 that my opponents are spending on media buys. And then the other way that you can help me if you're not in my district is to help us phone bank. We have a platform on my website that you can go on. You just go to my website and click on call voters, and you can start helping us reach out to constituents in the region. You can also help us text bank. So we are sending text to every single person that we can get our hands on before June 5th. And I have to mention this, but the vote by mail rate here in my district is 75%. And that's 75% of the population. And we're seeing a very, very, very low, unprecedentedly, just very low return rate. We're not even at 35% yet, and we are 2 days away from Election Day.
Yes. Well, you're a fantastic candidate. I'm so glad that I was able to discover you and have you on the show before the primary. I wish you all the success and good luck on Tuesday.
Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone, for watching.